Hello and welcome back to the Middling Along podcast. I'm your host, Emma Thomas, and today we have two guests, Jill Ross and Sarah Garton. Jill is a managing director at Accenture who partners with global clients, particularly in the retail and consumer goods industries. Sarah is also a managing director at Accenture. Her personal experience of menopause formed part of Accenture UK's MenoWarriors movement, designed to support and educate colleagues and make menopause a core component of Accenture's health and wellbeing agenda. They have over 700,000 people globally, serving clients in more than 120 countries, and this year became recognised as a menopause friendly employer in the UK. Welcome to the podcast, Jill and Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
This is a first for me. I've not had two guests on the podcast before. So as I said off air, I'm crossing everything that it's all going to work beautifully. Jill, can you kick us off by talking about how the MenoWarriors group that kind of came into being?
Sure. So the journey started in 2019, so about 5 years ago. And there were a couple of things that happened with regards to, I found myself, I was early 40s at the time. And I found myself having conversations with friends who were a few years older than me that were starting to talk about night sweats, anxiety, brain fog. And suddenly they were talking about something called perimenopause, which I found myself feeling like I was a teenager again.
Like, you what now?
Yeah, right? It was a situation that was like, what is this? So that piqued some curiosity. Also, because I work with retail consumer clients, I attended a leadership conference for one of my clients, which was for their top male and female leaders, and they had the menopause as a topic, and they openly talked about it. And again, it kind of made me realize that this was a topic and a taboo that we don't talk about, but yet every woman will go through it. So therefore, I took the opportunity to say to Accenture, which is, if we want to be a truly inclusive and diverse organisation, why was it a topic that we weren't talking about, given that we have such fantastic health and wellbeing offerings, conversations for inclusivity? And we started a conversation. And for World Menopause Day in 2019, we had a panel. And we had a panel that was co-sponsored by myself and also a male colleague, because I was very, very insistent that this wasn't a female-only issue. It would be a topic that both male and females would embrace the conversation. And so we had an event, which was really well attended, and we had Dr. Louise Newson, Emma Bardwell, and we had Saskia Graville, who shared insights into what is perimenopause and the menopause. And from that, our MenoWarrior community was started. And that's where I met Sarah.
And Sarah, you've talked, we've spoken before, and you've talked about the sort of the impact that event had on you personally. Are you sort of happy to share what happened?
Yeah, no, I absolutely am. Sharing the personal stories are the things that really resonate with our group. And I think, the story I tell is, I found myself one day in a client presentation, big sales pitch. It's a really large senior audience. I was standing there at the front of the room with all of these people kind of looking at me. And I was mid-sentence, I was full flow, I was like doing what I do. And then, at the time, I just didn't even know what was happening to me, but I just completely lost my way. It was, I now know it was brain fog, but it felt like this brain fog just descended, and I just couldn't remember where I was in my pitch. All I could see was this audience, this sea of faces looking back at me.
My chest is tightening just thinking about you standing up.
Exactly. Yeah. I was struggling to remember some of the vital facts. I was looking around, looking at the screen. I was going, oh my God, what is going on? And just as I'm starting to kind of pull it all back together again, I just had this incredible volcanic, I can only describe it as a volcanic eruption of heat that just erupted. And I thought, oh my God, I'm bright red, I'm sweating. And I thought that was a reaction to the fact that I'd had this brain fog. And it was a mortifying experience. I was in front of my boss. I was up for promotion. I'd just been promoted. I was in front of a prospective client. It was absolutely mortifying. And it's that heat, and that, that heat is the thing that stops you having a decent night's sleep. Then you think you're anxious because of how badly you performed in the meeting. And it's just this vicious circle. And there's only so many times that can happen before you start to think, well, I don't know what's going on with me. Something's going on with me. Oh, I know. I've just been promoted. Clearly, I'm not capable of doing what I'm doing. I've been over promoted. I'm out of my depth. I've got one solution, and that is I've got to quit. I've got to go and do something that is so totally different to what I'm doing, because I just can't cope anymore. And that was the situation I found myself in about 4.5 years ago, shortly after being promoted, and that's why I hang it on being promoted was the reason. And I had no idea that what was really going on for me was menopause related and simply reduced hormone levels. No idea that the physical and mental symptoms that I was experiencing were simply down to my body no longer producing estrogen. And it's estrogen, which is the holy grail, right? It regulates your mood, your body temperature, your brain function. So all the things that I was struggling with, if only I had known. Anyway, as a result of going to the session that Jill and Lee set up back in 2019, I was able to listen to Dr. Louise and to Saska and start listening to people go. And I suddenly realised that actually what I was suffering from was I was
What's your
perimenopausal.
light bulb moment?
Yeah, it was absolutely a light bulb moment. It was a real moment that mattered, because I'm sitting there and I'm working it all out, and I'm going, oh my God, this happens to coincide with when I got promoted. And it was that, you say light bulb, it was an epiphany. And I realised in that moment I wasn't useless. I hadn't been promoted beyond my capability. I was simply a woman in her mid-40s who had stopped producing estrogen. And I made the connection there and then in that meeting. And I think probably, and I didn't know Jill at this point. And I think at that moment I stood up, I put my hand up because I wanted to make a statement. I wanted to, I don't know, I felt compelled to say something. And instead of being able to coherently say, oh my God, this is amazing, you've just described me, I just burst into tears. And actually, I was mortified again, because I was a senior woman in a room full of people that I didn't know, and I just burst into tears because I was so overwhelmed with what I had heard, and so grateful that what I was suffering from was not unusual.
Yeah.
It was
A
quite
huge
normal,
relief. Yeah.
and a huge relief. And I was in a
Yeah.
room full of people who collectively and virtually put their arms around me and said, we know, we feel it too. And that for me was the
We've got
life,
you.
that was an absolute moment that mattered, because I wasn't alone. There was all these people sat in the room who knew. And for me, that was the thing that made me sit down with Jill afterwards and say, hey, look, sorry for bursting into tears in your session, but we've got to do something. There's a thing here that we've got to do. And that's kind of my story, really.
It's so powerful, though, because I think, and actually I was going to talk about this later, but maybe it's a perfect time to talk about it, actually. There's so much pressure on women, successful women, getting to a certain point. So it feels like disclosing this, kind of coming out in inverted commas, if you like, as menopausal, is quite a vulnerable thing to
Yeah.
do. I mean, for you, it was a knee-jerk kind of reaction. I'm sure
Yeah.
you didn't sort of think about it at the time. What are the implications for me in my career? But I think this, there is still just, despite 4.5 years on, whatever, all of the work that is going on to destigmatize it, it probably is still quite hard for people at a certain level to kind of be open and honest about that. But, you sort of have said that, it hasn't been detrimental to your career, quite the opposite.
Yeah. So I was, so you're right. I had a knee-jerk reaction in that room, and it was a safe space to have that reaction. The next steps were a little bit more concerning. So yes, let's do something. That's what we said, Jill and I. Let's do something. Let's set something up. But I think it's fair to say that both of us were a little bit concerned about, what impact could this have on my career, and I know, how might I be perceived. I worried that there'd be a lack of understanding from male leadership, and whilst we do have really good, diverse leadership, we do have, we're very close to 50-50, but my personal situation was I had a male boss, and I had to start talking about this stuff. What I I think what we have at Accenture is the fact that inclusion, equality, diversity, and the ability to speak up without fear of any kind of consequence or retaliation is a fundamental core value that we have. So, and it's not one that we simply pay lip service to. And I genuinely thought, you know what, I can speak up about this, and I can have this conversation in this organisation, because there are routes for me to go down if I do feel that I am being unfairly treated as a result of speaking out and having these conversations. And at the end of the day, Emma, the need to do something and support other women overrode most of my fears around my own personal career trajectory and all the rest of it. But it was Jill, Lee, starting that group, creating the momentum, meant that very quickly we weren't the lone voices, and it wasn't just one or two people standing up. We suddenly had a choir of people all singing from the same hymn sheet and wanting to support each other, which then really gained momentum post the Davina effect and so on, and then it just grew from there. So my career has continued to grow, and to my mind has only really been enhanced by the fact that I now get up every day and I have, yes, I love my day job, but I actually have a purpose beyond, that's bigger than my day job, and that's what keeps me going, and that's what keeps me at Accenture.
And Jill, so I've already mentioned that Accenture became accredited as a menopause friendly employer this year. What does that mean in practice?
Yeah, so we're really proud that we have become accredited. What it really means is that we're recognising and we're demonstrating that we understand the impact in the workplace. So for all our colleagues, and I would say purposely all colleagues, so for our women and our men, but during this life stage that women go through, we have an understanding and we have a care for the well-being of our people through the various initiatives, the cultural aspects, and engagement. We have partnered with PEPI. So we provide a service with PEPI so that, again, we can be informed and educated and supported. And I think that's the fundamental of what we've tried to achieve through the MenoWarrior group is how do you get education, awareness and support, and to normalise the conversation so that such actually people understand. And having had my own experience last year of overwhelming anxiety, loss of confidence, that actually what it is related to, and then to be able to have some education and informed thinking to go and talk to the GP and make decisions with regards to if HRT is right for you, if it's not, etc. But just to understand that actually the importance of your hormones in how you think, how your brain functions, your energy levels, etc.
And you've talked about you had a sort of a male colleague involved from the get-go, really, with this. How what kind of things have Accenture been doing to kind of bring sort of male allies into those conversations? Because, as you say, it's going to impact everybody, either directly or indirectly, and it is really, really important that everybody's on board.
Totally. And male allyship for us, again, is a kind of fundamental core of what we're trying to achieve. And what's interesting is male allies, particularly from a lot of our male colleagues and our male managing directors leadership, are experiencing this through their own personal lives and their partners. But also what's been really interesting is actually how many of our junior males are wanting to understand, particularly again in light of their teams, their colleagues, but also their mothers. And that's what I think has been really interesting is actually the generation coming through. So I have a view, Sarah and I, and the broader MenoWarrior group is how do we create the environment, the conversations such that our generation will be able to understand, but we have responsibility for the generation coming through so that it is actually a much more educated, informed. So as women are into their 30s, into their early 40s, they understand and aware of what the life stage ahead is, and then therefore the male understanding and support and awareness is key. We have men who come to the MenoWarriors groups who literally, and what is again always so heartening, and they're very respectful. Right? There's always a case that some men will say, are you okay that I'm here? But actually, I'm here to listen because my wife or my partner's really struggling. Or I can recognize in my team, I've got women that just don't no longer seem themselves. And I just know there's something that's not quite right. And my view is that the menopause, the perimenopause conversations are what were the mental health conversations of 5 or so years ago. And therefore, given the overlap of so many symptoms, has been even more so that actually it's not just about the traditional, oh, it's a hot flush. I never had a hot flush. I had plenty of night sweats. I broke down in tears and I lost my confidence. But actually, it's the understanding, which is, okay, what are the symptoms? the 40 plus symptoms that people can understand, and therefore what are the potential support or changes that's needed in the workplace. Okay, and in terms of the way in which we do our work. But yeah, I think, I say, for the male, we still have work to do in terms of the male allyship, but I'm really proud of the normalizing of the conversation. And yeah, I'd say that in terms of the, Lee Walters James, who we've referenced, who's our co-sponsor, he's very passionate in driving that conversation as well amongst male colleagues to feel confident to ask the questions as well, because I think there's this sensitivity and the kind of fear of, am I going to say something that's not right, versus actually them understanding and wanting to support.
Yeah. How do we get around that if people are, because I think very often we sort of hear from people who say, oh, I've got a male line manager, maybe that male line manager is younger than me, they're not going to understand. So how does somebody best, if they are that male line manager and maybe a bit younger than someone in their team?
So what we've encouraged is a few things, which is, one, having the confidence to talk about it. And I know that I've talked to male colleagues where actually they have said, Jill, you're the first person, not even my wife has ever mentioned that, but actually there is a real empathetic, which is, and curiosity, what does it mean? Likewise, we're very clear, if people don't feel comfortable actually speaking to another MenoWarrior, and what can we do to support? And it might be that somebody neutral or someone else, or talking to HR to help have that conversation. But given, as Sarah referenced, that respect for the individual is such a core value for us at Accenture, we are very much that we want to understand that you bring your true self to work, because that's the way we know that we'll get the most and the best from our people, as well as the best kind of enjoyment and retention of our people is key. So it's having I think they say, with the way we guide people is either having the confidence to have an initial conversation or calling on others. And I think both Sarah and I regularly, and Lee as well, get contacted by women from all across our business with regards to, I'm just not feeling myself. I've had one this week. Somebody is, clearly that I just can't stop crying. Can we have a conversation? And therefore, how do we become MenoWarriors who are within the business that people can talk to then have a support, a guidance, but also a help with regards to what are the resources that are available for them to be able to then take advantage and to be helping themselves as well as us as an organisation helping them.
And I think you've already sort of referred to the sort of psychological, emotional side of things, which I think in many ways is harder to kind of deal with in the workplace, and very often can be confused with other things, especially if somebody is under a huge amount of stress, whether that's home or at work. What are sort of practical ways of sort of supporting people who've got those sort of loss of confidence, the imposter syndrome, the overwhelm? What are the kinds of things that you have found to be impactful supporting people there?
So for me personally, I did a series of CBT sessions that really helped me. So CBT sessions, as well as we always encourage just the self-help. There's lots of books, there's lots of podcasts, and just sharing stories. I think what's been really helpful, as I say, Sarah's story, and then we have now been promoting, which is by having the human aspect and people sharing of stories that people can relate to and to understand, oh, it's not just me, and that kind of community spirit and of helping of each other.
Yeah, that community spirit really comes through when so the MenoWarriors get together once a month for what we call menopause, with the emphasis, capital letters, on the pause.
Very good.
And it is literally an hour every month where we get together, and some months it's literally coffee, cake, chat, virtually, and an opportunity for people to ask questions, get feedback from others. People have tried different things, whether it's CBT or some remedy from Holland and Barrett, or people are talking about their experience of HRT.
But just knowing you're not alone.
Yeah, exactly. Back to that, you are not alone. There is a group of people who get you. And then in other months, we will invite our healthcare provider and Peppy to come along to talk about, and provide a more, let's just say, more clinical approach to, because we're not obviously we're not experts and
No, you're
doctors and
not
all the rest of it.
diagnosing people and prescribing
Exactly.
them
So
HRT.
it's really good to get Peppy to come along, and they'll do everything from Menopause 101, everything you wanted to know but never dared ask, right through to specific topics like menopause and weight gain and things that you can do, and nutrition and supplements and core weight training, and all, lots of different subjects, and sometimes, menopause and sex and libido and testosterone, everything. And through those groups we can then every month signpost people to the provision and the support that is available, which is significant.
And that brings me nicely, thank you, on to my next point. So if someone's listening to this, they might be thinking, well, it's all well and good for Accenture. They're a huge global organization with budgets to match. Any advice on what smaller companies with smaller, or sometimes, no budget, frankly, can do to make an impact?
We're really proud that actually we used no budget for the first few years. We weren't given any budget, but actually it was a group of people coming together, male and females, cross-functionally. I think that's really important as well. We always kind of encourage, which it just needs one person to start a conversation.
Yeah.
It's starting those conversations which cost nothing, but are providing the support for people to then understand and be educated and to use the resources that are available. As I say, there's lots of books, there's podcasts, etc. Great podcasts like yours, Emma, right? Which is helping people to understand, and therefore within a small organisations, we're very much around how do those organisations and all organisations recognise that their talent is important, given that 1 in 4 women think about leaving, but actually 1 in 10 do leave in this career stage or this life stage, which is typically when you're the most senior leadership positions. And I think therefore for me it's a societal opportunity, but also a business impact. Diversity, inclusivity, retention of talent is all organisations are needing and wanting to do, because we all know that inclusion, diversity, and diversity of thought leads to better business results. So our encouragement will be to all organisations, large and small, to start the community and start the conversation and help to understand the impact in the workplace and make those adjustments as needed, but also help their women to be able to take the resources and to have the conversations with their GPs or others as needed to help them get the support. Because as I think Sarah said, and I always say, which is we hit 40 and our hormones decline. Who knew? But actually those hormones are so important to how we function, how we feel, what our kind of day-to-day lives are, and therefore our ability to do our jobs when actually we're at the peak of our lives, and actually the peak in terms of our opportunity in the workplace typically.
Yeah, it's a sad irony in a way, isn't it? It's like if we go down the sort of having children routes, they're getting to a point where that part of things is falling away, and then suddenly we're presented with this. Or
exactly, I think Sarah, you always talk about Sarah 2.0, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the Sarah the before the Jill and Lee session, and then going through the metamorphosis and taking the actions I needed to take to help myself, and some of that was HRT, some of that was about lifestyle changes. I do feel like I have emerged out the other side at completely the right time. My kids are both grown up. I'm an empty nester. I feel younger, fitter, slimmer, and more on it than I did prior to that. And I've got none of the challenges of having dependent children anymore. So it's all. I genuinely feel like I've gone through a metamorphosis. It's incredible coming out the other side.
I think it's also about aging well, and that's the other thing we talk about, which is about actually how can we age well, and particularly, I mean, for me personally, I've got dementia in the family, and I observe with regards to hence, right, and I look, and what's interesting that 2/3 of dementia patients are female, and then it was for me then reading in terms of the impact of estrogen on the brain. For me, it was like, okay, what do I want and can I do to help my brain, help my bones, and that aging well and understanding the impact, given that, say, we're all living longer and we want to have a quality of life in how we live longer
it's
as
so
well.
far reaching, isn't it? And there is so much that we can do, either alongside HRT, as you were saying, Sarah, or if we choose not to go down that path, or there are reasons why we can't kind of go there. And I think that's a big part of what we're trying to do on the podcast is sort of talk about all of those different sort of levers that you can pull, or tools in the toolkit, however you want to think about it. It's not just a kind of HRT or no HRT kind of
Absolutely.
binary.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, that's what I love about our menopause chats. The sorts of things that people say, oh, I do this and it really helps. I've got a lady in the northeast that goes and she goes and swims in the North Sea every day in a dry suit. But she says it has been game changing in terms of the way she feels about herself. It helps her regulate her temperature. Brilliant. And then, you know, we just get all these brilliant little ideas and people try them, and that sense of community, that sense of belonging really helps people understand that there isn't just one answer to this to help you get through it.
I think generally in the UK, you know, we haven't nailed it. We haven't got all the answers, but we're quite a lot further ahead in these conversations, and especially in terms of trying to tackle sort of the taboo in the workplace. But as a global organization, what do you see in terms of sort of different cultural challenges in different countries, and, you know, any sort of particular things that are working well to kind of help kind of get other countries into the conversation?
Again, I think it's been the catalyst of it needs the 1-2 individuals in the countries. So it's really fascinating in terms of the cultural aspects. So we, our colleagues in Philippines and India were probably one of the first. And again, given the number of women we have in our workforces, it's important for all our geographies and all our market units. Likewise, there's a MenoWarriors group that's been established in Australia, and we're delighted that our colleagues in the US are actively starting the conversation. And we know that Europe's about to start. So our encouragement is a twofold: is that clearly we have a global health and well-being is key in all we do. We do have a chief medical officer, chief health officer, Dr. Tam, within Accenture, and we meet with her actually regularly on a quarterly basis to share what we've been doing in the UK. And to inform the other geographies. And as I say, we're very much, which is, it needs the spearheading of just a couple of individuals like myself, like Lee, like Sarah did in the UK, which was to have the confidence and to start the conversation. And that's all it needs to then get a catalyst of many others. And we recently published Dispelling the Myths on a global awareness, a global newsletter. And what's been really fascinating again is all the geographies. So, you know, people from the Nordics, etc., go, actually, what can we do in our geography? So yeah, I think Claire, Sarah and I have a real ambition, which is how do we normalize this conversation globally? And as Accenture, we have a great opportunity given our size and our scale and our reach, both for our own people, but also for our clients and the impacts and what we do across the globe.
Do you get clients that you work with coming to you and saying, I see what you're doing over there, how can you help me to do that
Definitely.
in my own
And do you know
company?
what's been fascinating for me is actually male clients. I had a LinkedIn pin from a former male client, and obviously again I think we all use LinkedIn to post and all the rest of social media, etc. But I had a male client write to me in LinkedIn just to say thank you. Thank you for sharing, because it's helped me be able to have conversations when I knew that things weren't right with my wife. So yeah, I think everybody's on the journey. Everybody recognises, and I think you're absolutely right. With UK is leading the way in normalizing the conversation, and other geographies are recognizing it. But to me, and it's what we talk about all the time, is our strat plan is smash the taboo. Why is it such a taboo? We need to smash the taboo so that we feel normalize the conversation, and for people to have the confidence and support that's needed at this point in life.
Is there, I mean, obviously you see every day the kind of the impact on a personal level. You're talking to colleagues, you know, you're going along to these events. Is there sort of a measurable impact in terms of sort of retention or performance that Accenture is actually looking at as part of this?
So as we inevitably every year at this time of year we're planning for the next financial year, and as part of our planning for the MenoWarriors group, we conducted a survey of, and not just of the MenoWarriors group, but across our UK base, and we were, because we wanted to understand the impact that we're having and what more could we do. You know, a couple of the key stats that came out of that were really quite heartening. So one was that 80% of the workforce know about us. They've heard about the work that the MenoWarriors are doing and the support that is in place. And even more heartening that was that more than 60% said that the impact of the things that we have done has made them want to stay at Accenture. Wow. Which is pretty incredible stuff, really, and just makes us feel that yes, we're on the right track. And is there more to do? Of course there is. There's a lot more to do. There's a long way to go, and this is not a static group of people that stand still. We get new members all the time as people start to tick into their late 30s, early 40s, and start experiencing perimenopausal symptoms. So one of the things that we've realised is that we have to just keep on doing the same. Some people will have heard the 101 thing 5 times, but that's okay to keep on repeating that, because new people come in and it never ceases to amaze us how many people go, oh my god, this has just been the most helpful conversation I've had this week. Or
you're creating all of your own light bulb moments for
exactly.
everyone else.
We're creating light bulbs all over the organisation, for sure.
We are just planning at the moment, again, World Menopause Day. So this will be our 5th year of celebrating World Menopause Day. And one of our areas of focus this year, though, will be ethnic groups. So what we're trying to do, look at, again, the intersectionality, and actually that we know that perimenopause and menopause for ethnic groups is different as well. So again, we're focusing on that as our activities during the week of the 16th of October, to again just be able to educate, to share, to inform women of all groups. We're just kind of in the throes of planning that.
And that was, I think, one of the other things that came out of the survey, the intersectionality of menopause. I mean, it literally cuts across all of our other accent on groups, whether it's LGBTQAI, whether it's the ethnicity groups. And increasingly, there's a conversation happening around the impact of menopause on people who've been diagnosed with ADHD. Fascinating. Again,
it is fascinating.
Really fascinating. And so, we're finding that there are little pockets of people who are looking at this through a slightly different lens, and certainly everybody's journey is different, and it's truly an education for Jill and I every week.
Have you had any kind of backlash at all?
So the interesting bit is when we started the conversation, when I initially started the conversation in 2019, I'll always remember 2 comments. One, you're too young to be talking about the perimenopause, menopause. And the second one was really interesting, which is, well, you don't want to talk about that. That'd be a reason why you're not as good we could be deemed women, not as good as the men. But I have to say that, and again, Sarah knows the history here, which is I didn't let that stop us. And again, that would be my advice and guidance to any other colleagues and women out there in other organisations is, don't let that put people off. Actually, it made us have the sense that said, actually, no, we need to open the conversation. It is a sensitive topic, right? For some people, they don't want to talk about it, and that's fine. But for others, it is that informing. It's the informing and awareness that is, oh, that's why I don't feel like myself. Oh, that's why I've suddenly lost my confidence. So, the case which is for some people, as I always remember, that you're too young. Well, am I too young? No, I'm not. But equally, I say it's the sensitivity aspects.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a brilliant pace to draw it to line. Jill, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. I know how incredibly busy you are, and so I'm really, really grateful. I think there's loads of great takeaways from this. Whether someone works for a global organization or an SME that with 6 people in it, there's always something that we can do to kick off the conversation. And actually I'll link again in the show notes here, because the BSI has just brought out their fantastic guide to menstruation, menstrual health and menopause in the workplace, which is a free resource for anybody that can go and get hold of that. And it is got loads of really useful. It's a great starting
point for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speak to you soon. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Middling Along podcast. Do remember to subscribe to be notified when our next episode is live. And why not visit the blog at www.middlingalong.com to sign up to my newsletter as well. I do hope you enjoyed listening today. If you did, I'd be really grateful if you would consider leaving a short review, as that helps people find the podcast and helps get it noticed. Hope you can join us next time. Goodbye for now.